What if you could live somewhere relatively inexpensive, but at the same time still have access to high-quality, affordable healthcare and other social services like education? A place that also happens to be known for its history, architecture, culture, cuisine, and gorgeous landscapes like mountains and vineyards. These are the major advantages people often cite when considering living in France, a country people frequently compare favorably to other countries, including the US, where I'm originally from. I'm Susie, I'm American, and I've been living and working in France since getting married to my French husband in 2008. I sense there's a lot of interest about living here in France, and since this is a channel that focuses on money, investing, and living in France, I thought I'd combine these topics with my experience of living here to give you an example of how much the cost of living is for our family of four. In this video, we'll start with a little background to give you an idea of what average salaries and housing costs are like. Then I'll show you what our family's monthly budget actually is. Just to give you a little background, I certainly did not set out to move to France for economic reasons. I'm here because I married a French person back in 2008. My husband and I had actually planned on getting married and living in the US, but the process was just so long and expensive. Plus, I had already lived and worked in France. I knew that I liked it here, that I could find a job here easily, and that the whole process would just be simpler. So we took the path of least resistance and got married here in France and have lived here ever since. We have two kids. One is in middle school and one is in primary school, and they've both gone to public school since starting school at age 3. We live in Dijon, a small city southeast of Paris, which is much more affordable than the bigger cities in France like Paris. We really like the lifestyle here. Dijon offers a lot of amenities while still being very compact and affordable. My husband and I both work. He has a full-time job and I have several part-time teaching jobs. So in terms of average salaries in France, I found that private sector employees receive an average of 3,466 euros gross per month with a net income of 2,630 euros, according to the latest data from National Statistics Agency INSEE from 2022. The difference is payroll deductions into the national healthcare, unemployment insurance, and retirement pension systems. This equates to a yearly net salary of 31,560 euros on average, but this total varies considerably, however, depending on your job category. Managers earn on average 4,490 euros net per month, while blue-collar workers earn on average 1,940 euros net per month. So for my husband and I, we can consider that our salaries are just basically average. But it's also important to note that 17.3% of the working population earns the minimum wage, or the SMIC, which is about 1,300 euros net per month for full-time employment. I truly don't know how people make ends meet if they're only earning the national minimum wage. There is government aid in the form of subsidized housing and other monetary benefits, but I know it is very difficult for many French families to get by considering the cost of living and the relatively low salaries here. Full-time employment in France is 35 hours a week, and all full-time employees have 5 weeks of paid vacation minimum per year. I imagine just those two details might motivate some people to want to move here. And as for a little perspective, the average annual salary in the US, according to OECD data from 2022, is $77,463, which is equivalent to 72,884 euros, which is significantly higher than here in France, where the average is 41,592 euros. To be honest, if we only had our salaries, which fall squarely within these averages, I think things would be a lot trickier for us. But because we also have rental income, notably a very cash-flowing short-term rental property right here behind our house. In fact, it was our garage that we converted into a short-term rental and that we've been running for the past 3 years. That rental income has allowed us to save and invest much more than we would have otherwise been able to. I have lots of other videos here on my channel about our short-term rental, including a tour and monthly updates about our revenue, and I'll link to those in the description below if you want to check those out. All right, so that covers average salaries. So now what about costs? I think we should start with average housing costs, since for most people that's their biggest expense. I love real estate for its wealth building potential. So in addition to owning our primary residence and having converted our garage into a short-term rental, my husband and I have also invested in several rental properties over the past few years. If you've seen my video about affordable rental properties in the area, you know that near us, it's possible to buy a house for about 70,000 euros. And I'll link to that video in the description below as well. Granted, if you buy a house for 70,000 euros in the countryside surrounding our city, it will probably require a lot of work. But it is possible to find a small house for that price. a reasonable price for a house that's a bit bigger, maybe in better shape, closer to the city, and that probably has some outdoor space is probably about 200,000 euros. For example, I found this house that's not too far from Dijon that looks like it's in good shape, and it's on sale right now for 190,000 euros. In fact, the average price of a real estate transaction in France in 2022 was 266,000 euros, and this was the national average for houses and apartments combined. Whereas the median home price in the US as of September 2023 was $412,000, just for a little point of comparison. Granted, if you want to buy a house or an apartment in the city where I live, of course it's going to be more expensive. On average, it's about 2,500 euros per square meter for an apartment in my city, compared to about 3,100 euros per square meter for a house. But if you zoom out and you look at the rest of the département, you can see how the prices go down considerably outside of the city. This website, meilleuragent.com, is a great resource if you're looking for the average price for real estate in any French city or town, in fact. So here you have just the biggest French cities that are listed here. But if you want to do research about another city or town, you just enter in the name of the town here, and you'll get information about the average price for an apartment per square meter and for a house. And you can zoom out and you can even see that they have data for basically for each neighborhood. So this is a great resource. Maybe you're not ready to buy a place yet, so you can use the same website, meilleuragent.com, to check out average rental costs as well in different cities and villages around France. So here you have the average square meter, the price of a rental for an apartment, and the price of a rental per square meter for a house. And you can compare the data that you find on meilleuragent.com with data from this website, seloger.com. And here you also have information about average prices for real estate in France, both to buy something and also to rent something. So for example, let's check out rental properties in my city. So you can search by the name of the city or by the postal code. And we can see that in my city, it's about 12 euros per square meter for a rental property. So if we take that information from Seloger and we do a search for, let's say, 50 square meter apartment in Dijon, which is about 540 square feet. So this is like a small one bedroom, basically. You can see that there are some search results that appear. So you might be thinking, great, okay, yes, this falls within my budget, 600 euros for housing. That seems relatively cheap. But remember that your salary is going to be probably average, right? So maybe about 2,000 euros per month. So you can see that you're already spending almost 30% of your salary on housing. Granted, you might need more space, you might have kids, you might need more bedrooms, and then the housing will be more expensive. Or you might be able to find a way to cut down on the housing costs if you live with roommates, for example, or something. So, I know that the housing costs will vary depending on the person. But you can start to see where the cost of living issues start to come up when you see that people may be paying, for example, 600 euros rent and have just 2,000 euros per month in terms of salary. One last real estate related data point to mention as well to take into consideration if you are thinking about buying real estate in France and you're going to take out a bank loan is that interest rates are relatively low here as well. So a standard 20-year fixed rate mortgage here in France right now, the interest rate as of August 2024 on average is about 3.6%. Okay, so we're done looking at average salaries and housing costs, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty and look at one specific example of one family's budget, my family's budget. Okay, here we go. Let me just preface this by saying that these are our fixed costs, more or less, although some of these are slightly variable from month to month. And of course, it's impossible to anticipate all of the unexpected incidentals and expenses that come up, but I really did my best to try to take into account all of our regular monthly expenses. So like so many families, housing is our biggest expense. So we bought and renovated our little modest house over 10 years ago now. And initially the interest rate was a bit higher on our mortgage, but we took advantage of lower interest rates and refinanced it. And so now our mortgage payment is about 1,070 euros per month. We also have mortgage insurance and homeowners insurance and property taxes that we pay on our primary residence. In order to figure out how much we spent on food, I meticulously tracked tracked this for several months as a sort of experiment because I really had no idea how much we were spending, because we often do several big grocery runs to the supermarket and to the green grocers. For example, on this run, we spent 140 euros at the supermarket and 80 euros at the green grocers. But we also buy bread pretty much every day, and there's lots of other little shopping trips that come into play as well. So I really was curious. I had no idea really how much we spent on food, and it came out to be about 750 euros per month on average for the four of us. So this next line was a bit difficult to label, but basically it includes all of the services that the city provides, but that we pay for. So for example, our youngest son, who is in primary school, he, depending on our work schedule, he goes to before and after school care. And he also eats lunch at school 4 days a week. And the school lunches are organized by the city, but we do pay for them. And here I'm going to show you the school lunch menu. This is from the August calendar, so for the kids that are in the city-run daycare programs during the summer. Just to give you an idea, the school lunches during the school year look very similar to this as well. And yes, they're very appetizing and very well-rounded. And all of the dishes that are in green are organic, and purple is local ingredients, local dishes as well. So he eats well at school. Also, this includes all of the activities that we participate in that are organized through the city. All of the members of our family partake in different activities that are organized by the city as well. And these things we pay for on a sliding scale. So it depends on our revenue, how much we pay to participate in different activities at school, or how much we pay for our son's lunches and before and after school care. So we pay about 5 euros per lunch for our son. It's a different system for the middle schools. So they actually prepare the lunch at school in the cafeteria, whereas opposed to the primary schools have like a centralized kitchen, and then the city transports the food to the different schools. For the middle school, everything is made or prepared, I guess, there at the middle school. All kids pay 2 euros per lunch in our département. Anyway, I don't know how it works in other parts of France, but 2 euros for, again, a very well-balanced meal means that this is heavily subsidized by the département. And again, it means that, lunches at school can still be very affordable for most families. Next, we have utilities, and my husband did change our electricity provider at the beginning of the year in an effort to kind of rein in some of these costs as well. So this is the new lower price that we're paying for electricity. Then we have water, internet, phone, and mobile phone plans, and you may be surprised to see how little we pay for internet here at home and for our mobile phone plans. These may be on the sort of lower end of the spectrum for these services because my husband has done some shopping around as well, but it's just telecommunications are relatively affordable here in France compared to, for example, what I know some people pay for their mobile phone plans in the United States. So then we have the costs associated with our car, and we have just one tiny little paid off ancient micro car that costs a little bit nonetheless to keep up. Of course, we have to pay for insurance every month, and we have to have it inspected every 2 years. For example, that's coming up as well in terms of expenses. I didn't even include that here in the calculation. And even though we don't use it that much, we do have to fill up occasionally, and gas is so expensive here. We filled up last week and we paid over €1.85 per liter. And if I'm doing my calculations correct, I think that's over $7 a gallon. So you can just see how expensive it is. And that's one reason that I hardly ever use my car to get around. I usually use my bike, my e-bike, public transportation, or I just walk. We also are very lucky that my husband has a car for work, which we can use sometimes if we need to for longer trips, for example, as well. And when we do take the highway, then we have to pay for the highway. So that's the price of tolls that I included here as well. The next category probably looks like a totally random grab bag as well, but I also tracked all of these expenses last year, so I think that these averages are pretty accurate. So this miscellaneous category includes other activities that our kids do that are not organized through the city, their allowance, any sort of extra little expenses that we have for the house, clothes, restaurants, alcohol, gifts, and haircuts. And this is, again, just an average because, of course, these amounts vary by month. But I think overall we spend about 700 euros per month on all of these things combined. The last two line items, which were pretty easy to track, were bank fees at 24 euros a month and subscriptions at 40 euros a month. So we have a total of about 3,500 euros a month for our basic expenses. In this table, I did not include how much we pay in income taxes, and I also did not include how much we save, invest, or put into our vacation sinking fund, because it can be so variable based on different families, different households, but also because for us, our savings, investments, and vacation fund is mainly financed, like I said earlier, by the revenues from our short-term rental and not necessarily by our salaries. And the only other thing I didn't include was the amount that my husband pays for the family coverage of the complimentary healthcare insurance that we have through his work. So his employer pays for most of it, and then as the employee, he has a little amount every month that's deducted directly from his paycheck to cover his part of the complimentary healthcare insurance. So you may have noticed that there's no line item here for healthcare specifically, and it's not that we don't have any out-of-pocket healthcare expenses, because we do, but they're relatively insignificant. The way it usually works here, for example, if you go to the doctor, you pay out of pocket at the doctor's office for the visit, and then the national healthcare system will reimburse you 70%. And then if you have a complimentary healthcare plan like we do through my husband's employer, then they cover the remaining 30% of the cost of the doctor's visit. That's more or less how it works. It's a bit more complicated than that, and I have actually been trying to track how much we spend and then how much we're reimbursed for the different healthcare services that we've used in the past couple months, because I thought that it might be interesting, that you might be interested in seeing a video about that as well. But it's so complicated and so complex that I haven't started working on the video yet, because I thought I would ask you if you were interested in seeing something like that, and if there is enough interest, then I will do a video about that as well if you're curious. Let me know in the comments below. So what do you think? Are you surprised? Did you think it would be higher or lower? And also, I'm going to take advantage of having more eyes on the family budget. Is there anywhere that you see where we could cut some corners and save some money? Please let me know in the comments below if you see anything. In any case, I hope this video was useful and informative for you. Maybe you're even considering a move to France yourself. And if that's the case, you should definitely subscribe, because I'm planning on doing a video soon about different ways that non-European Union passport holders can move to France. So stay tuned. If you've stayed all the way to the end of this video, I assume it's because you're really interested in France, so you should definitely check out this other playlist, which will include some other videos that I hope you'll find interesting as well. In any case, thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, à bientôt!